Friends, citizens, good people of the United States of America, I'm full aware that many of you will not have made my acquaintance personally, so perhaps some small introduction may be in order. My name is George Washington, and I've had the honor of being the President of our United States these last 7 years. And the instance for a new election of a citizen to administer our executive branch of government being not far removed, I thought at this time it proper that I apprise you of the decision that I have reached, not without some mature reflection. And that is that my name shall not be amongst the number from whom your choice shall be made. No. I have long hoped that I might be allowed to return to that peaceable retirement from which I had been so reluctantly drawn. But the confused and perplexed state of our affairs, both domestic and abroad, had caused me to forego my own personal preferences. Stepping away as I now do from the public stage, I cannot fail but to look with gratitude upon the many honors that you as people have placed upon my brow, and the continuing support that you have given me. We are taught by the ancients that there is no greater honor that any man may hope to achieve than recognition by his neighbors and virtuous countrymen for service to his nation. And so for that recognition, I am certainly pleased. And perhaps here I ought to stop. But my ongoing and continuing concern for your happiness and felicity as a people causes me to wish to share with you certain opinions I have come to. Thoughts which I have come to with mature reflection, and which I hope will be received by you, not as coming from the President of these United States, but rather simply the remarks of a departing friend, who cannot hope for any personal gain by having shared them with you. In these last several years, we've all learned to look upon the union of our states with great love and affection. And so it should be. For it shall always be from our union that our safety and our importance depends. I am very much of the opinion that our continued happiness and success, I dare say our very existence as a free and independent power, rely upon three great pillars. The first of these pillars is an indissoluble union of our states under a strong federal head. The second is a nearly sacred regard to public justice. And the third is that we might allow our national tendencies for wisdom and pacification, to allow us to put behind us our local pursuits, our contracted policies, and our absurd petty jealousies of one another. It is astonishing to me that there are still those amongst our number who look upon the states as somehow being all-knowing and all-powerful amongst themselves. Such consideration will certainly bring upon us our ruin. This is as clear to me as ever was the ABCs. 16 states, all of them pulling against one another, and every one of them tugging against the federal head will certainly bring upon us our ruin. This is as clear to me as ever was the sun in its meridian brightness. Whereas a wise and liberal constitution, closely watched and guarded to prevent encroachment, that gives us every reason to suppose that we might obtain that level of dignity and respect that we had every promise of achieving. We should not look to those matters that hold us separate and divided, but rather to those matters that bind us together as one. We worship the same God. We speak the same language. We enjoy the same political principles and customs. The independence and liberty which is now ours is the result of joint efforts, joint struggles, joint disappointments, and joint successes. By way of unrestrained trade, the North looks to the South to see its commerce expand. By way of that same unrestrained trade, the South looks to the North to see its own agriculture grow and its own commerce prove successful. The East looks to the West to provide a valuable vent for all of those commodities which it either produces at home or imports from abroad, and likewise the West looks to the East to provide all those necessities requisite for its continued happiness and success. Our continued happiness long rests upon the success of our union. And these last several years, we've all learned to look upon this union with great love and respect. We've all become witnesses of a most novel and astonishing of spectacles, of an entire people gathered together peaceably to determine for themselves under what form of government they believed they will live most happy. The people of our United States have gathered and with serious consideration have created a new written constitution far superior to its predecessor. One that provides for a balance of its powers and allows for its own amendment. In truth, it may well be said that the most important of all of our political principles and customs is this ability to amend our systems of government. But let us always remember that just as with any other human institution, that time and experience are just as necessary to determine the usefulness of governments and constitutions. Let us never enter into alteration or change simply for the want of innovation or novelty. Likewise, let us remember that before such alteration or amendment is made by the will of the people as a whole, that our Constitution as it exists at any given time is the law of our land and must be given all due respect and dignity. There is no more power granted unto our general government than that which is absolutely necessary for the business of good government. These powers are divided betwixt a legislative, executive, and judicial branch in such fashion that there may never rise an aristocracy, a monarchy, an oligarchy, or any other form of despotic or tyrannic government, provided there remains virtue within the breast of our people. For by way of our Constitution, the sovereignty of our nation shall always be within its people. Let us never allow any branch of our government to encroach upon the powers of the other two. For such encroachment tends to concentrate all the powers of government into just a few hands, and it is a true form of despotism. While there may well arise some occasion where such encroachment appears to give us some temporary benefit, or perhaps to increase our national security, that we must always remember that it is by encroachment that one finds the usual means by which free governments are destroyed. Therefore, any benefit which may be had on the short term is greatly outweighed by the evils that such precedents lean towards. If there is some error in how the powers of our government be distributed, let them be altered. But let them be altered by amendment, and never by encroachment. I mentioned when I begun that we should avoid seeing factions arise by way of regional distinctions. But it is just as important that we endeavor to avoid seeing factions arise by the spirit and fury of party politics. The alternating domination of one political party over another, spurred on by the spirit of revenge, will always drive a nation further and further from its better interests and greater counsels. It causes a man to be servant not of his nation, but merely a servant to a political party. Now, I'm aware that there may be those amongst your number who might make the argument that this spirit of faction, that it is a portion of our human natures. And that may be so. But just as we have by other means endeavored to improve upon the way that nature finds us, so too must we endeavor to curb our tendencies towards irregular passions and desires. And there may be those amongst your number who might argue that This spirit of political party is necessary to keep a government free. And that may also be true in those governments of a more monarchical cast. But in any truly free government, such as our own, there will always be enough difference of opinion for salutary purposes without the creation of political parties. Political party is a very dangerous fire, which, if allowed to smolder unwatched, will soon consume everything before it. As it is a pillar of both our strength and our support, let us always endeavor to preserve public credit. One of the best means by which public credit may be preserved is to avoid spending it unnecessarily, remembering always that timely disbursements to provide for a nation's defense are oftentimes more affordable than those occasions of necessary war when they arise without such preparation. And when we find ourselves in those circumstances of necessary war, let us remember that the debts caused by such actions must be paid, and never left ungenerously be paid by our children or our children's children, which ought to have been paid by ourselves. Now, this last maxim is, of course, the responsibility of your representatives within the legislature. But public opinion has a portion of which it must play, which is simply this: that for debt to be paid, there must be revenue. And for there to be revenue, there must be taxes. And there have never been taxes created which are not inconvenient and unpleasant. As to our foreign affairs, let us reach our hands across the ocean as friends. Let us endeavor to see peace and harmony expanded across the globe. Religion and morality both enjoin us to such action, and can it somehow be that good policy does not likewise engender similar counsel? Let us reach our hands across the ocean as friends. Let us see our commerce expand, that there let our relations with foreign powers end. Let us never allow our affairs of state to be guided by too strong of an affection, or for that matter, too strong of a hatred for a foreign nation. For again, these are forms of slavery. In the one, a nation becomes a slave to its love, and the other a slave to its hatred. Too much love for a foreign country causes a nation to imagine common interests and sympathies where in truth don't exist. And too much hatred for a foreign nation causes a country to too easily take offense, and therefore to too easily find itself drawn into unnecessary war. We find ourselves in the most remarkable of circumstances. Providence has made us the sole lords and proprietors of a vast tract of continent, one that provides us with all the soils of the earth and with many of its climates, which therefore might provide us with all the necessities of life and many of its conveniences. By way of our victory over Great Britain, we are now generally acknowledged to be in the complete possession of our own independence and liberty. And Providence has now crowned those previous blessings by way of our American Constitution and more recently our Bill of Rights with a greater promise of political happiness than any nation has heretofore been offered. Why would we forego these advantages? To step away from our own native soils, to engage in foreign wars which are no concern of our own. The war in Europe betwixt England and France is an ancient feud and not our concern. Let us not allow ourselves to grow embroiled in foreign entanglements. I dare not suppose that any of these words I have shared with you will long be remembered. If they occasionally come to mind, to serve to protect our nation from the spirit of faction, from false patriotism, or the spirit and fury of party politics, or that we must disengage from foreign intrigues, so that I, for one, will be satisfied. Whether or not I have been guided by these principles these last several years, I believe the public record will answer. But let me affirm to you all here and now but I've always at least considered myself guided by them. But I'm also too full aware of my own shortcomings to not imagine that I must have committed many errors. I beseech the Almighty to reduce whatever evils these errors may lean towards. I hope that you, the people, that when you look upon them, that you will do so with indulgence. For the knowledge that any errors I may have committed have never been from a malignancy of my heart, but rather merely a want of talent equal to the zealousness of my patriotism. I look forward now to stepping away from the public stage, to taking my place alongside you as a common citizen in a free and independent United States of America. I believe that we are all, from here forward, to be viewed as players on a most conspicuous of stages, a stage which seems destined by Providence for displays of human greatness and felicity. Our systems of government, they are not perfect, but no more perfect government has ever been penned by man. And there may be some promises that have been put forth that we as a people have yet to achieve, but that is now our responsibility together, as citizens of a free and independent United States, to make good on those unanswered promises. I, for one, take strength in my knowledge that Providence, after having already carried us through so many dangers and hazards, will not now leave its work undone. God save us all. And God save the Constitution of our United States of America.